Siobhan Bailey.
Mr. Deputy Speaker. Thank you. I have two main points to land, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Firstly, that the best way to get work ready and improve life chances is to get a job and progress in the job that you have. Secondly, that we need a clear-eyed look at existing training provision, including the apprenticeship levy, to provide thousands of jobs in SMEs, the backbone of the country, particularly the jobs and businesses in the Stroud district. Now, many moons ago, a boss told me I had bounce-back ability. This was a polite and positive way of noting that I get up every time I mess up and fall flat on my face, which is pretty often. But that boss changed my life. A free school meal kid from a chaotic single family and leaving home at 15 means you basically get written off. But the stats say you're in trouble, but it doesn't have to be a given, as my own story will testify. I started work as a secretary, and over time the firm saw something in me to get me into a training programme. I attended night school and law school at the weekends. It took a long time, but I qualified as a solicitor. I had no debt, and I had years of experience under my belt. But I hid all of this for a long time because I was embarrassed. Most lawyers go to university, and Tony Blair had rammed into all of us that university was the only way forward. I was wrong to be embarrassed, and he was wrong to have such a narrow focus. I did not see that all my jobs, paper round supermarket, checkout girl, aerobics instructor, spinning instructor, all that to pay my law school fees, and years at the coalface of work, I didn't understand that that had an equivalent value to a degree. So I was wrong, and I'm happy to admit that because I have bounce-back ability. And the best way to be work-ready and life-ready, to really grasp the chances that come across your face and come across your desk, is to actually go to work. Social mobility is not just about poor kids getting into Oxford. For workless families, a parent holding down a job will improve the social mobility of their own children. Becoming a manager or retraining into a second career is social mobility in action. But snobbery about further education and no degree sadly continues to this day. You just have to look at Carol Vorderman's attack on the Right Honourable Member for Plymouth Moor View and his wife. She said that they had not a single degree in sight in the same tweet as who would employ them. This is the latest example of nonsense. Dismissing a minister who works tirelessly for the armed forces and veterans for not having gone to university is bad enough, but deliberately being condescending about the lives of millions of people who did not go to university is absolutely unforgivable. I used to admire Carol Vorderman an awful lot before she decided to eat so much political hate for breakfast to get social media hits. Now, sadly, I just feel sorry for her. But thankfully, this government recognises that the quality of life that employment and training can bring is absolutely at the heart of our growth strategy. Despite the global economic turmoil, the UK still has the lowest unemployment since the 1970s at 3.9% and the fourth highest employment rate in the G7. I give credit to the Stroud Job Centre, the DWP team, because we had the Secretary of State of Work and Pensions there. They're doing an incredible amount locally and a really bespoke, careful look at how we help people off long-term sick in particular and into jobs. In the Sun newspaper yesterday, Matthew Elliott, the president of the Jobs Foundation, talked about how securing a full-time salaried job cuts the risk of falling into poverty by 90%. That is 90%. He explained that productive and meaningful employment gives us an opportunity to learn and develop our skills. It allows us to afford a better standing of living and brings structure and routine, which helps mental health and well-being. At a time when a fifth of people are not confident about their own financial position, millions rely on their job. Jobs, training and in-work development are therefore gold standard. I've set up an APPG about employability to explore this issue further, largely after a decade of discussions about education with my friend Ronald Lehman, who founded Finito, who helps young people get work ready. The APPG has also been backed by the Institute of the Motor Industry and the WISE Group. They're incredibly helpful in thinking through how we can make people get into jobs and stay in jobs. But now to my second issue. I believe we need a clear-eyed look at the existing training provision to help SMEs and to help people stay in jobs. This government is stealing a march on creating lifelong learning opportunities. There's a range of training programmes including skills boot camps, sector-based work academy programmes, they're called SWAPs, the multiplier programme supporting adult numeracy, and free skills for jobs courses. Returnships are also basically all of the above with apprenticeships, but for people over 50 returning to work or seeking a career change. My challenge to the Minister, Mr Deputy Speaker, however, is that I do not believe we need new fandangled policy or legislation. We actually have everything we need. I do not want to see any more new fancy pants schemes. We need to reform the ones we have, and so we need to accept that good products like the apprenticeship levy, we need to change them to make them business friendly, so not scrap them, improve them. So thinking about returnships, for example, over 500,000 over 50s have stepped away from the workplace post-pandemic, so I completely understand the focus on that age group. But with the rise of technology like AI, it will be people in their 30s and 40s who may need to change employment. So let's tweak that policy and see who else we can help. And so much is dependent on the apprenticeship levy being efficient. I listen carefully to people like the Federation of Small Businesses and businesses like Renishaw and Borg Warner in my constituency who have apprenticeships, as well as local companies who desperately want apprentices. Many feel that the system is just not working for them. I appreciate that this is strictly a Department for Education issue, but it's so crucial to employment. I am really grateful that it's the Minister from DWP, the Minister for Employment, that is responding today, because every apprenticeship is a job with bells on, and it so often leads to a long and meaningful career. It's also cheaper to the taxpayer, given that 44% of student loans have to be written off in the year 2021 to 2022 by the government. So I respectfully believe that the economic inactivity and millions of out of work benefits, those challenges that the DWP and Treasury are grappling with, mean that these departments also need to take a keen interest, as well as the Department for Education, and listen to what Stroud District employers, the Association of Colleges and Chambers of Commerce all over the country are telling us. It cannot be right, as UK Hospitality point out, that one of my local pubs cannot transfer their levy to another pub in the same chain, and the levy will just disappear back into the Treasury if it's not used. That cannot possibly be right. We can make those changes so that we can make this thing work better for business. But I cannot take credit for all the next clever bits that are coming. It's the brains of the Policy Exchange. I really recommend their report. Ian Mansfield and Toby Hurst. My local college, SGS Stroud, also asked me to cover many of the recommendations that Policy Exchange have highlighted. So a few points just to have in the back of our brain before I come to recommendations. So over the last 5 years, £4.3 billion has been raised by the levy, but they're not spent on apprenticeships. A Recas UCAS Sutton Trust report found that 430,000 students were interested in apprenticeships, but only 5,000 a year are starting degree equivalent courses. Now, I have a UTC college in my patch. I went there with Lord Baker. It was started by my predecessor, Neil Carmichael. Had those students, young women, STEM students, up here this week saying they're desperate for apprenticeships, but they cannot actually find one. These are brilliant-minded young people. We have to get them into the jobs that they want. So learning on the job, we know, is attractive to all ages, and actually learning at an older stage in an apprenticeship where you're earning and learning is really crucial to those of us with families and mortgages who need or want a career change. Yet, unfortunately, the total number of apprenticeship starts has gone down to about 349,000 in 2021-22. That's significantly below the 393,000 in 2018 and 19, and lower than the high of 500,000. So while the quality has absolutely definitely gone up, this is something we need to look at because the starts matter. The number of starts in SMEs has also fallen by almost 50%, but small employers employers all over the shop, many of whom I speak to locally, want to train up their own workers. And as Policy Exchange explains in detail in the report, the requirement to pass English and Maths at level 2, so that's a GCSE equivalent, means that somebody can be barred from achieving an apprenticeship qualification in bricklaying, childcare or IT due to a lack of achievement at school that may be years or decades ago. We desperately need these workers. I'm fighting campaigns about childcare workers, so it's absolute madness. I will give way. Thank you.
Giving way. I'm very taken by what she's saying about the, if I may say, the ordinariness, if such a word exists, of the training needs. And my own constituency of Aberconwy, and the Minister has been kind enough to come and visit there. Tourism and hospitality are the major employers, and I see there almost on a daily basis when I'm in the constituency employers, hotels, pubs, restaurants, etc., talking about how they are trying to offer employment to the young as a first job, to those perhaps in middle age who want something more flexible, and also to those who are returning to the workforce at an older age, and increasingly, I must say, with the Minister here, to those who are perhaps on the edges of employment in conventional settings, and a little more effort with a bit more help from the DWP is making them suitable for the work environment. So, to the point the Honourable Lady is making, does she agree that the packages that the government offers and the help it offers needs to be applicable in those very ordinary and routine settings?
I absolutely do, and I welcome the intervention. I think that the reality of talking about these, about everyday jobs, but jobs that we desperately need in every single one of our constituencies, is key to actually getting, to impressing on the government as to why these changes are needed. And the bureaucracy and the pain in the neck that comes with trying to work through the levy and an apprenticeship is actually putting off quite a lot of small businesses. They do not have the extra department to do the work for them and do the paperwork. But Policy Exchange and I have some ideas about this. So what we were thinking to really push forward is to suggest a few things. There's absolutely loads of recommendations in the report, but I've picked out a few here. So the first would be to transform the levy into a growths and skills levy. So that's allowing employers to spend up to 25% of funds on high-quality employer-relevant skills training, including shorter and more flexible courses. To my honourable friend's point, this is about flexibility for everyday businesses and everyday people. The second point, we want to see a £3,000 incentive for every young apprentice trained by an SME to help help support the smaller businesses with off-the-job training costs. And we also think there needs to be course finishing bonuses to make sure we encourage the learner going all the way through. The adult learning budget is a fraction of the tertiary education budget, so I would like to see some funding made available. I would view it as levelling up skills and jobs around the country. Next, create an SME roles and hubs at colleges and growth hubs to support SMEs in dealing with the bureaucracy and recruitment of apprenticeships. We have regional school commissioners. Why not a regional apprenticeship facilitator? That's the RAF. I'm sure that the actual RAF will have something to say about that. But why can we not provide these regional support systems? Next, abolish the apprenticeship minimum wage, with all apprenticeships to be paid the national minimum wage for our age. Now, I recognise that that is a Treasury matter and that we are not flushed with money in the country, nor indeed is any country in the world right now. But youngsters will choose in financial constrained times a job in a supermarket that pays more than an apprenticeship, because not only do they need the cash, apprenticeships are hard graft. So we need to reward them. It will help all of us. I'd also like to see the link to the migration shortage occupation skills list. So I start that again. I'd also like to see a link of the migration shortage occupation list to skills training. That's a mouthful. Employers should be able to use the levy to fund qualifications to help businesses train up local talent instead of being forced to rely on immigration. So I'd like to know what the Minister Minister thinks of these proposals with his employment hat on. Will he tell us about what DWP is doing to use employment to improve life chances of people of all ages and make the UK's existing training provision work for those small and medium businesses? I really want training and education to work for work. And before the Minister responds, I do want a short note on work placement. So the Employability APPG are looking at how we can increase the numbers of work placements available and gaining people being able to gain experience at any time of their life. A constituent told me today actually that his daughter has had an incredible work placement last week in Nailsworth at the Stella Systems. Now they're naval architects. That's quite cool. Now, she had a really brilliant time learning with them in a very highly specialist area, and they did not need to give their time, but they did, and she will no doubt benefit from that for the rest of her career. So I think we need to normalise those opportunities throughout the country. And then a final note, there was an empty Stroud notice boards at the Lansdowne Hall during the pandemic, and it was covered in the local newspapers, and one of the notice boards said the best way to learn anything is by doing it. Model some clay, carve a piece of wood or a carrot. Sculpture can be made out of anything. I think it's a question of finding a material in the visual language that speaks to you. So over to you, Minister, to sculpture your response.
Yeah.
Minister, go on.
Well, good news today. As vacancies are down, employment is up, economic inactivity is down, and my honourable friend has rightfully brought forward an utterly crucial debate that could not be more timely. Genuinely, it could not be more timely. We start with a situation where since 2010 we have created over 5 million, 454,000 apprenticeships since May 2010. That is an astonishing figure, well over 5 million, and it is something to be celebrated. But I take the tone of her debate to be a celebration of what the government has done, and rightly lauding the efforts to get more people into employment, a celebration of the apprenticeship levy and the clear successes that it has brought to this country, but also a desire, frankly, to do better, and that is something that I utterly endorse. I am fortunate that I am only responding for one department, but I think I probably would need to respond on behalf of the Treasury, on behalf of the Department for Education, Her Majesty's Business Department, and various other departments that she rightly cited. But bluntly, I'm happy to try and set out the position as best I can. I endorse what she says about the Policy Exchange report, which is eloquent and well made and makes some very good points. And also, I know that she and I have spoken in the past to the chair of the Select Committee, the Honourable Gentleman for Worcester, who has brought forward, I think only a couple of months ago, a specific Education Select Committee report looking at further education and post-16 education, all of which should be noted by the House. It is unquestionably the case that upskilling our workforce is totally the most important thing. We need to do it, not most of all, because we're trying to reduce unemployment, improve social inclusion, productivity and progression. And I have to say that the 2 visits that I have done to my honourable friend in Aberconwy's constituency, which I visited, and it is an amazingly beautiful constituency, a little while back, and the work that is done by DWP in his part of the world. I was on the phone to them literally this afternoon in respect of the cases in Ynys-Môn and the work that our colleague from Ynys-Môn is doing to try and deal with the issues in Llangefni. They are fantastically committed to transforming the outcomes that we all hope. And I was privileged to visit my honourable friend in Stroud's constituency and meet the business Adaptivate, meet Tom Robinson, go around his factory, and obviously that was in a former life as a pensions minister. I then enjoyed a brief 49-day holiday as a backbencher to return in this present role, which I hope I can contribute to some further matters to. She is right that the Stroud JCP, I will of course.
For giving way, and it's just simply to compliment him for his visit to us, the work he did there, and for his pronunciation of the Welsh place names.
When I had to secure the survival of the Amloch Job Centre. That was a particular challenge, but my mum is a Llewellyn and grew up in the Towie Valley, so I hoped that I have got some Welsh in me, aside from the ability to order 2 beers in Welsh. I was on Stroud, and the Stroud Job Centre does a great job, and I just want to make 2 points before I get into the nuts and bolts of her submissions. I also am proud to call the Honourable Gentleman from Plymouth Moorview and his wife Felicity friends. I think they have been very much abused by others over the last few days, and she's right to cite Ronelle Lehman, an old friend of mine who has done great work with Finito and creating opportunities. I have met, Mr Deputy Speaker, over the last few months, the CBI, the FSB, all the key business organisations, and most importantly of all, I've met UK Hospitality, because we are trying our hardest to drive forward true change to ensure that we get proper job opportunities created to fill the vacancies that clearly exist in the hospitality industry up and down the country. And I was privileged to meet all the leading players in the hospitality industry on the 4th of July, literally last week, when they came to the Department of Work and Pensions, led by our honourable friend for the Vale of Glamorgan, who is chair of that particular APPG, and to really see how we could flex the employment offer that is existing there. And I look forward to being in front of her employability APPG, which I know I'm booked into in September. It's in the diary. And it is unquestionably the case, is it not, that whilst the government has committed 1.3 billion this year to fund a range of opportunities designed to raise skill levels and subsequently the social mobility, and a huge amount of money in the National Skills Fund investment, we are also trying to remove barriers to prevent people from progressing, whether that is through universal credit and the in-work progression that we know is so vital, or whether that is through utilisation of the apprenticeship levy and the skills that is there. It is difficult for me in my humble position as a junior minister to articulate that there is going to be widespread change to the apprenticeship levy, but I do believe that we should be supporting the institution that it is, but also asking ourselves how we can improve and enhance the offer. She sets out a number of particular recommendations, and one of which was very familiar to me because I met Punch Taverns, Green King, Budweiser, Heineken, Molson, all the big players in hospitality, all of whom made the simple point that they pay the apprenticeship levy, but they cannot then transfer that to the pub that they have as a franchise up and down the country, doesn't matter which constituency, and they cannot transfer that to the individual publicans so that they can employ an apprentice. It does seem to me that that is something that the government can potentially be looking at to see how they can flex that on an ongoing basis. She also raised the issue of the brilliantly named, I think they are, Regional Apprenticeship Facilitators, the RAF of the modern era. And I think that she has a fair point to make, which is every one of us in our constituencies up and down the country, Mr Deputy Speaker, has a regional schools commissioner who looks after our regional area and drives forward excellence in education in that particular way. Why would one not try to facilitate that in circumstances for apprenticeships? As to the £3,000 incentive, I bow to others who know the particulars in more detail, and as to the abolishment of the apprenticeship minimum wage and harnessing of that so that is to the other Treasury-led national minimum wage for their age, that is a matter that I'm sure she will take up with the Treasury. What I, as a government minister, will do, though, is I will ask my colleagues at DFE, HMT and BIS to respond on those individual points in writing to my honourable friend so that she gets the detailed answers as to how it is she can drive forward ongoing change, particularly given the APPG that she runs with others. And in relation to other matters she raised, I think it is a fair point to say that there is a gap that we have to acknowledge between the amount of money that is raised for the apprenticeship levy and the actuality of the spend. There is a gap. And how is it that this country can try and squeeze that gap to ensure the outcomes that we also willingly seek in our constituencies are improved? And I certainly would hope that is the, one of the major things that is pressed upon me. I know that the chair of the Select Committee made it very strongly clear to me that they was very passionate that there was enough entry-level apprenticeships on an ongoing basis, and others have made the point, and I have had the opportunity to visit South Essex College with my honourable friends from Rochford and Southend and see the benefit of T-levels, which is transformational. Other countries are copying T-levels. There is absolutely no doubt that we should be doing more in that space and have great opportunity to do so. I am conscious of time, but I agree with her also that our over 50s offer has to get better. She will know that we have now 37 over 50s champions across the country in each different region, pioneering and driving forward real change in the attitude. And some of us have inexplicably reached the age of 50 and need to ensure a supportive approach to that, but try and change the attitude of employers and also co-workers to older workers. There is no doubt as well that we need to try and drive forward the way in which employers look at employment. And I will finish on the point about the DWP, because why would in particular employer pay somebody to provide a service when the Department of Work and Pensions will do a skills boot camp, will do a sector-based work academy, will do all manner of other things from returneeships and so much more to provide that training for free? We exist up and down the country in over 700 locations in everybody's constituency. I was honoured to go to the Canvey Island Job Centre very recently with a whip on duty, and I have to say they do a fantastic job training up people. It is a free service to local employers, and it can be from 1 week up to 12 weeks. And we just want more employers to sign up to taking people in this particular way. We'd like more employers, bluntly as well, to sign up to T-levels. There is no doubt whatsoever we need to try and do more in that space. It is clearly the case that the childcare reforms that she pioneered, and I know that she was a frequent visitor to the Chancellor over the previous 9 months, that the childcare reforms that she pioneers, without shadow of a doubt, have done great work to drive forward change and have an opportunity so that individuals can now go to work and have the ability that their children are being supported and paid for by the state. It is certainly the case that it is making a difference in universal credit. And to conclude, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we continue to work closely across government and with employers and stakeholders to refine the support on offer and more closely align employment and skills. We need to do that, frankly, because it supports unemployed people who are looking for work. And whilst the present position is very positive in terms of increasing employment, reducing vacancies and a reduction in economic inactivity, we all know that there is more to do. And this is a government that is passionately committed to ensuring that we solve these problems.
Yeah.